Hello and welcome to the European Resilience Initiative Centre. Today in our video podcast, we have a very special guest, an Australian person with a call sign Doomsayer, who is located in Ukraine since several months and who produces FPV drones. Welcome. And can you explain us first, what are FPV drones?
Thank you very much for having me. And FPV drones are essentially, FPV stands for First-Person-View. So it's a drone where the operator has the camera view that the drone has, and they're used for a wide array of purposes in Ukraine.
So, if I'm not mistaken, you produce them here in Ukraine and you deliver them to the Ukrainian army. So, how they use them and what is exactly why are they so important?
That's correct. So we produce them here in Ukraine locally, using parts we source overseas, but also produced with Ukrainian hands, not just my own. And what we do is once we've built the drones and tested them, we then send them to the guys on the front line, and they use them predominantly for kamikaze purposes. So a one-way munitions, basically.
So these are these videos when we look at when we use YouTube or Twitter, we have a lot of videos how a drone is flying into a window of military construction or a truck or a car. That are the birds you produce.
That's right. That's right. So the guys get very creative on the front line with what type of munitions they put onto them, whether they want to attack an armored vehicle, a truck, a bunker, or anything like that.
Wow, that is amazing. Don't forget to subscribe to our video channel to have the first access to videos like that. Don't forget to like, to share, and to comment this video. And we go further into technical details of how FPV kamikaze drones are being used in Ukraine and how they help the Ukrainian army to liberate the territories. So tell us, please, what are the technical characteristics? Of course, like as much as you can tell, we know like we need to respect the rules of security. You have your face covered. We don't tell where you're located, what city, where do you produce them, out of very obvious reasons. This weekend, we have had a terrible Russian attack in Chernihiv, where a lot of people who were connected to drone production and drone usage have been targeted by the Russians. Many people have been wounded. 10 or 11 people have been killed, including several children. So we don't want to disclose you, and we don't want to spoil your production. But the details which you can openly discuss: what is the payload? What is the distance? What are the technical details of usage of these drones?
So we've been playing around and researching with all different specifications to see what works best. We have drones that are able to carry between 1.5 to 2 kilo payloads. Another drone that we were working on with a team was a drop drone, which is able to carry 3.5 kilos as well, which is another, very effective weapon. In terms of distance, it does depend on the environment to which you're flying, and also depending on the payload. So you can have drones that can fly up to 10 kilometers. You can also have drones that can fly further. But like I said, there are various conditions that come into play. But the way the guys are using them effectively is they'll have a recon team scouting for a potential target. Once they've located a target, they'll know exactly where they are, and they'll send in the FPV drone to go there to take the target out. And that can all be done within a matter of minutes. So it's not always about distance. Sometimes it's just about striking very quickly.
So effectively, it is not one FPV kamikaze drone which is doing the job. It is a team of drones, like several drones operators who are doing their job, right?
That's correct, yes.
So you have like normal commercial drones for observation with good optics, probably, which like locate the targets and say, okay, now send the birds with a payload, and then you send them. But do the Russians use like some electronic warfare? I'm pretty sure they do, to disturb the communication. What can be done against this?
That's right. The Russians in a lot of areas along the front line are using electronic warfare devices to jam GPS signals, as well as block the traditional commercial signals that say your off-the-shelf drones use. So what we've been researching and working with our drones is using different frequencies that the Russians aren't able to jam as easily. And along that lines, we're also implementing small. I can't really say too much about it, but there's small things we're doing to the software in order to make it harder to jam.
Well, that is amazing. And but let me go like now to the very, very basics. Like when you start the production of the drone, you need to somehow produce the body. You need to have electronic components like chips, other equipment for that. How do you do this? Where do you get all these details?
So a lot of the components we do have to order in from overseas, but we are now starting to manufacture some of the parts in Ukraine, parts like the frame, for example. We've discovered, or after a lot of testing, we've found the right size that seems to be the most effective, and then using traditional manufacturing techniques, how to mass produce them in Ukraine, so we don't have to rely on buying everything from overseas. And we really think this is the way that Ukraine needs to move in the future in order to be more effective on the battlefield.
How many drones do you produce per month?
It does depend. So we are a charitable organization, and it does depend on our donors. So, for example, we can produce one drone now for roughly between $400 to $500. So
Wow.
it does depend on how much money we can collect. But one fundraiser we did recently complete, we raised over 70,000 US dollars over several months. So you can imagine how many drones we could produce with that.
And don't forget to look into the description of this video. You will find a link and you can personally donate for the production of FPV drones and help the Ukrainian army to liberate the Ukrainian territories more effectively. Don't forget, one drone costs like 450, 500 US dollars. That is nothing compared to the price of the high precision ammunition, but they are as prestigious as the HIMARS or other artillery shells. So don't forget to look into the description and find a link for donations for FPV drones. But back to this technical question, I guess a lot of components are coming from China, right?
That's correct, yes.
Are there any problems? The Chinese are famous for making problems for the Ukrainians now, with, for example, with deliveries of Mavic drones or other drones.
So there can be some issues. It depends on the supplier, but there are suppliers that aren't able to ship directly to Ukraine. So we have to get creative with how we can get them to Ukraine.
So when you look, like you have already several months of experience in Ukraine, and what is your overall view of the role of the drones in this war, and how can you estimate like the capacities of the Ukrainian own drone production?
So I served in the Ukrainian Armed Forces for several months as a drone operator, and the difference having a drone on your side makes in terms of keeping your guys safe and seeing where the enemy is, it's something you can't replace. And now with everybody wanting the FPV drones for offensive purposes, it's a game changer. It's changed the way that we're fighting this war. Unfortunately, the Russians too, they've learned the value of drones and have been using them as well. So the way I see the future of warfare, drones are going to be a very key component in playing that.
Well, as long as you have mentioned your past as a serving as a drone operator, as a volunteer in the Ukrainian army, I may address this issue without like uncovering some details. Like, could you explain us like what is the daily life of a drone operator Do you operate from an open field or from a trench or from some like secure location? I'm pretty sure the Russians try to hit as much they can drone operators.
That's right. And it does depend on the environment that you're living in. So, for example, when I was deployed, we would operate mainly from a trenched position or inside of a structure like a house. And the daily life would be maintaining your equipment, making sure your batteries are charged, making sure everything is working and in correct shape. Because when it's go time, you have to grab all your equipment and take it with you, and you don't want to have any failures while you're out there on the front lines.
But like, what are the things which can like which can tell the Russians where is your position? Are these the antennas, or do they try to triangle you? Please forgive me my stupid questions.
So with some off-the-shelf drones running certain software, there is a device that can be purchased by anyone, which allows that person to pick up any drone operators in the area. So what we do is we use external antennas and a long cable. So when the signal is found, it's actually the antenna that's being picked up, not the operator themselves. So when the Russians do find that signal, they'll send a shell towards the antenna and not towards the operator. And I've seen some close calls where our antennas have been shelled and taken a lot of shrapnel damage, and we just think, thank God that wasn't us.
Wow, wow, that is of course a very scary feeling, like seeing the consequences of a Russian artillery strike, as they believed they have hit your position, but thanks God it wasn't you. It was just a piece of metal antenna. But regarding the coming back to your drones, do you deliver them to the Ukrainian army? Do you have like your like some units which you constantly supply with the drones, or do you like write just like announcements, guys like we have produced that much drones this month, you can pick whatever you can take?
We are in touch with the Ministry of Defense, and we ask them which units need drones right now. We like to spread the drones out to as many different units as possible, because unfortunately, one thing that we do see online is that some units are more popular than others, and they receive maybe a lot more donations. So what we try to do is try to also give the drones to units that maybe aren't as popular or as well funded, because we know how effective a drone can be in saving those lives and helping with the operations.
Yeah, that is because, of course, like when someone is very popular on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or other social networks, they can like organize constant supply for some units, but the other units, like they remain practically naked, as they are dependent on volunteer support. Of course, they need these drones too. But coming back like to kamikaze drones, the FPV drones, what is the normal usage, like the number of these drones being used by a Ukrainian, let's say, battalion per week? Like just to have an impression of the scale of usage of that.
I couldn't actually give you an accurate figure on that. Every unit has their own way of doing things. But I will say one battalion that I did meet with, they were using at least one or two drones every day, and they had a kill count of at least one dead Russian every day over a 3-month period.
That means that at least one drone hits the target.
That's correct, yes.
Now, that is an impressive rate. That is a very impressive rate. And coming back to the technical characteristics, if we say you already mentioned like the payload of like up to 2 or even 3 kilos, this is something comparable to a mortar shell, right?
That's right. And I've even seen guys strap a RPG warhead onto a drone, like a proper armor piercing round, not just a fragmentation round. So
So,
it is possible to make such a high-powered weapon for such a cheap price.
that means that they can actually hit not only soft targets, but also armored targets.
That's right, correct.
But if we say about the future of the drones, where are the limitations? Like, can we make the drones bigger? Is there any need to make them bigger?
You can always make the drone bigger, and I have seen a lot of people doing it. But in those cases, it's mainly for dropping munitions rather than being the munition itself. So I was speaking with one guy, and they had an octocopter which could carry, 20 to 30 grenades. So it could be basically like a small carpet bomber just dropping grenades on an autonomous path, and you don't even need a pilot flying it.
Well, octocopter is, you mean like it has like 8 propellers, right?
Correct. Yes, that's right.
But that makes the whole thing huge. Like, doesn't it make the whole drone as into a target, like for guns, like for hand arms?
So that's why we have stayed away from building such big drones because one, they're a bigger target, two, they're louder, and three, they're more expensive to produce. That's why we stuck with building kamikaze drones now because they're small, they're fast, and they do a lot. They can do a lot of damage.
Well, what are your perspective of making the production like cheaper or more massive? Like, where are the limitations for production?
The biggest limitation for us right now is funding. If we can raise a high number of funds, it means we can buy everything in bulk, which brings the cost down significantly. And the other thing that we're working on now, like I mentioned earlier, is producing as much as we can in Ukraine. So we have manufacturers who are able to do it, and we're just going through kind of like the prototyping phase at the moment.
Oh, that is an important reminder. Go to the commentary section, not to the commentary section, to the description of this video. Find the link for the donation and donate for FPV production of the drones to help the Ukrainian army to get rid of the Russian invaders. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to this video channel, to like and to share this video to spread the information. My next question regarding the drones production in Ukraine. We have seen a lot of interesting Ukrainian projects. We have seen the Akula Shark project for the drones. We have seen the naval drones. Can Ukraine turn into a country which covers all its demand for the drones by itself, or can Ukraine maybe even export some drone technologies?
Look, there's a lot of very, very smart, intelligent people here in Ukraine. So I believe that, if Ukraine continues to put its resources together, there's definitely a future for drone production in Ukraine, whether that be naval drones or land drones or air drones.
Well, but what kind, like we have seen like that the Ukrainians, they tried to, at least like for the larger drones, they tried to make them into the drones which can hit the Russian air bases, like in 100 kilometers, 300 kilometers, which is quite different to FPV drones, which you produce, of course. But it is exactly like the same idea, like to don't spare the life of your pilots and hit the Russians where they can. You have seen the Moscow drone attacks. Can Ukraine produce enough of such drones to make Russians' life complicated? And how do you overall see these attempts to attack Russian air bases and Moscow government facilities?
I think definitely, and each time we see a drone flying into Russia, into Moscow, wherever, we know that it's totally capable of doing that. And sometimes I think it's just Ukraine doing a bit of a test to see how their drone performs. And if they're able to fly to Moscow and do damage, I know there's going to be a stockpile of them in the back ready to go one day. So I definitely think Ukraine is capable of doing it. It just comes down to, like we mentioned earlier, funding and resources. Those are the two main things that we need to continue to do this.
Does this mean that actually, as soon as you, please forgive me this stupid question, but does it mean that as soon as a drone crosses the electronic warfare lines, defense line along the front line, it actually comes to more or less uncontested airspace where there is like no air defense working, and it can fly all the way further to Smolensk, Engels, or Pskov?
That depends how well the Russians have their air defense network set up. But once it crosses, so the thing with the electronic warfare along the front line, it's not like a massive wall that can't be crossed. If you fly high enough or at a certain angle away from where the beam is pointing and jamming, it's more or less up to the Russian air missile defense to shoot it down. And as we've seen, they don't seem to have a very good missile air defense around.
Wow, that is amazing. That is amazing. And maybe the last question: what are the total amounts of drones and the characteristics of drones, which you would say when you produce them, you would say, "Well, I'm happy. I'm done. Like it is what I wanted to achieve. I can retire happily."
I'm going all the way till Ukraine has victory. I'm not going to give up anytime soon. Same with my team. We've been here. I've been in Ukraine for over a year, working, doing all I can, and now being involved with the drone project. It's something that I want to be involved with till the very end.
Well, that is an amazing statement. Very clear, very strong. It was an interview with Doomsayer, Australian-born producer of FPV kamikaze drones based in Ukraine for over a year, who used to be a drone pilot in Ukraine and then started his production of drones for the needs of the Ukrainian army. You may donate for his project. You will find the link for the donation in the description of this video. Please like, share, comment, and thank you for this interview. It was more than impressive.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава!